Hey, y'all. What's up? Coach Paul here. God has qualified me. This is Move Mondays, and you have greatness in you. All right. Before we get to talking about that greatness, I want y'all to watch this. If you don't move, that person, those people, those places, those things, those thoughts, or those ideas, they are definitely going to move you. And I promise you this, you don't want to move where they're going to move you to. All right, y'all. Let's get going for the day. I was at a meeting the other day serving, and one of the topics that came up was surrender. And when that topic of surrender came up, it was almost like everybody started shivering or surrender, treating surrender like it's a bad thing, or talking about surrender like it's a bad thing. And the thing that came to my mind as I was watching and interacting with, this conversation about surrender was that we'll willingly surrender to those things that bounds us or locks us up, while we'll be pushed back or reluctant to surrender to the things that have set us free. And that is 100% true. We'll expeditiously, willingly, without giving it a second thought, surrender to those things that will lock us up or hold us bound. Watch this. And if it's holding us bound or locking us up, it's hindering our greatness. On the other hand, that thing that'll set us free in terms of what we surrender to, that unlocks our greatness. So one of the things that I understood was that surrender is a requirement and a prerequisite to your and my greatness. And when you think about surrender, because I want to make sure that we understand this and don't get this twisted. Surrender is not a one and done. You don't surrender today and then that's it. I was talking to my brother Johnny earlier today, and one of the things that he had said about the surrender, because that was the topic of conversation, that I had today because I have a greatness meeting, right, with my two brothers every other Thursday. And one of the topic of conversation today, when we talk about greatness, was surrender. And he said something that was so profound yet simple. And this is how we understand that surrender is not a one and done. He said, that thing that you surrender to today may not be the same thing that you need to surrender to tomorrow. So that's one of the reasons why, number one, we have to be open to surrender, willing to surrender, and honest about whether or not we are surrendering. Because even if we lie to ourselves about surrender or surrendering or lack thereof, it's going to show up in our lives. It's going to show up in what our lives are looking like, whether we surrendered or not. And again, like I said, a prerequisite and a requirement to be able to walk in the greatness and extraordinary potential that God has put inside of you and me is that we're going to have to surrender. The Bible even talks about it. Submit yourself to God. Submit yourself to God. That's a part of surrender. I remember, and again, so before I talk about that experience that I had, the word surrender means to give up, right? To let go, to open up. And I remember years ago, when my life was messy as all get out, the 18 plus years that I had spent in and out of prison and jail and treatment centers. Every time the police said freeze, without hesitation, I surrendered. But every time that I got into a place or a situation where after I surrendered to the police and started getting the help that I needed, every time I got into those situations, I surrendered like it was a one and done. And I didn't have to wonder why I always ended up back in these hellhole type of situations. And what I mean by hellhole, I hated these situations, and I continue to end up back in those situations because, again, I had set it in my mind. That's why I said, if you don't move those thoughts or those ideas, I had set it in my mind. I surrendered. So watch this. All needs to be well. I shouldn't have to surrender no more. I surrendered. And so everything that I'm hoping for and praying for and wishing for in life, everything that God says that he has for me, it needs to be released now because I have surrendered. And that was all a lie. I was lying to myself. And if that's you out there listening to this episode of Move Mondays, you doing the exact same thing. So again, Johnny said that thing that you surrender to today may not necessarily be that thing that you need to surrender to tomorrow. And we have to make sure that we have an open mind to that, because there's going to be various things that we all are going to have to surrender to continuously. Watch this, until the day we die, in order for us to move into and act out in the fullness of the greatness that God has put inside of each and every one of us. I remember God said to me, he said, Paul, son, because again, I just kept going back and forth. He said, you know how when the police tell you freeze, how you surrender? I said, yes, Lord. He said, I need you to do that for me. And some of y'all out there who is listening to this episode of Move Mondays can relate to what it is that I'm talking about. What is that thing? Watch this. Because again, when we talk about surrendering to the thing that's going to set us free, there's always, because when we was having that conversation, I could see the reluctance in all of the people who was interacting with us in the conversation that we was having about surrender. I can see the reluctance in them, and I remembered the reluctance inside of me, right? I remembered it. And the thing is, it's crazy how when the surrender that's going to set us free comes along, we start having boundaries. We start having what ifs. We start getting the yeah, buts. We start getting all of that. And it's hard. It's hard to surrender. And I hear that especially from us males, us men. It's hard to surrender. But you surrendered. Watch this. We all surrender to something every single day. Some person, some place, something, some thought, or some idea. We all do it every single day. Here is my question to all of us. Is the surrender that we are giving into moving us in our greatness? If it's not, then it's locking you up. It's locking me up, and it's holding us bound. And so that's the question for today. That is the question for today. I got a few more things that I'm going to talk about in terms of the surrender. But that's the question of the day. What are you surrendering to? Who are you surrendering to? Because all of us is doing it. And what do I mean by that? Let me give you some examples of things that we need to surrender to. We need to surrender to a healthier spiritual life. Yep. We need to surrender to that. We got all of this mess that we out here listening to now just going into our spirit, right? That's filling our spirit, but we won't listen to the things that's not messy, that's healthy, that's going to feed our spirit. And so that's what we need to do. Number one, we need to feed a surrender to a healthier spiritual life. What does that look like? A healthy relationship with God. And I'm going to say this again. I say this on many of my episodes. All that you talking about, me and God got our own thing, that's a lie from the pit of hell. If you want to talk about a lack of surrender, that's one of the greatest forms of not surrendering that you could ever exercise. That one when you always saying, or you have fooled yourself into believing that me and God got our own thing. I don't need to be with no church or no people or no community. Lie from the pit of hell. We need to surrender to a healthier diet, right? Healthier ways of, and I'm talking about with our bodies. Because, again, we live in a country that's the most unhealthiest country physically in the world. Why? Because we won't surrender to the healthy foods. My wife says it to me like this. Excuse me. Because I've practiced many years of eating unhealthy. And my wife said to me, she said, you know what, Paul? She said, I noticed that you eat for taste. And I had to think about that. Because she was right. I want to taste it. If it tastes good and it's not pork, Paul would eat it. Is that healthy? No. Is that surrendering? Yeah. But is the thing that is that surrender going to help me live longer? No, it's going to take away years of my life. The other thing, we got to surrender to not allowing our emotions to control our actions. We got to surrender to a healthy relationship with our emotions and our mental state. Dr. Anita Hill said, all of us have mental health. Some of us have mental illness. And that's partly because of a lack of surrender, right? It's a part of a lack of surrender. And so we have to surrender to that as well. We have to surrender to a healthier way of living in terms of our emotional state and our mental state. Whatever's going to help you get there, whoever's going to help you get there, wherever is going to help you get there, we need to surrender to that and submit ourselves to that. Because again, I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning of what Coach Paul talks about. And this is what he says. Everybody has a form of greatness and extraordinary potential in them. Every last one of us. Now, how are we going to get there? How are we going to walk in it? How are we going to maintain it? Is contingent upon our surrender. It's just that simple, people. How we going to get there, how we going to walk in it, and how we're going to maintain it is contingent upon our surrender. So people out there in Move Monday's world, are you just as willing to surrender to the thing that's going to set you free as you are to that thing that's holding you bound and keeping you locked up? If not, this is what Move Mondays is about. How can we help one another learn how to surrender to the things that's going to level us up and not hold us down? Lastly, I talked about the spiritual aspect, the physical aspect, the mental and emotional, the communities that you hang around, right? the social settings that we have to surrender to a community of people that's going in the direction that we want to go. We have to surrender to a social setting of people who are going in the direction that we want to go. We have to surrender to creating healthy relationships with our finances. We have to surrender to making sure that we take on that job or that occupation or that position that's tied to our greatness, that's tied to our purpose and the meaning of our lives. We got to surrender to leveling up from an intellectual standpoint. What do I mean? We got to surrender to learning new things, learning new ways, right? And incorporating these things into our lives. If we are interested in walking in the greatness and the extraordinary potential that God has put in each and every one of us. With that being said, y'all, I'm about to land this plane. And y'all know what? I love every last one of y'all. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it. And so the next time we get together, please, y'all, be well. Do the next right thing. God bless you all. And if you're looking for a butt, it's going to always be easy to find one. This is Coach Paul signing out. 2 of them.